The Many Ice podcast is pleased to be known by the artist known as JFresh from NHL Twitter. Of course, a stats expert for EP Rinkside. Jack, he may be better known as to some, but JFresh, we are glad to have you. How's it going?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me on.
Certainly, Matt. So I kind of just want to start off here. Where are you from? What's your story? You don't have to get too in depth, but where are you based out of and what kind of shaped you?
I'm from Halifax, Nova Scotia, the Maritimes of Canada originally. Moved to Toronto for university in about 2013 and have been there ever since. So I am fully in the center of the hockey universe, total Toronto bias and all that. In terms of doing the whole hockey stats thing, that was really mostly kind of a product of quarantine, to be honest. I mean, I just kind of started posting randomly back, I think, last February or so, and got a little bit of momentum with like trade deadline and stuff like that. And then I think quarantine just really put us in a position where there was a lot of appetite for hockey content and just nothing going on in terms of actual NHL action. So a lot of the actual proper professional hockey writers took a well-deserved vacation, and that left a pretty big vacuum for somebody who had just graduated with all job prospects evaporating all of a sudden and having a hell of a lot of free time. So we're a year later. I am somehow a professional hockey writer. So overall, things have worked out pretty well. But I think that pretty much covers it.
Just a crazy tie-in. That's actually how I got really into hockey enough to be able to do this podcast and to be able to be part of ManyIce.com was through COVID and not having anything to do other than just sit and watch hockey. So that's awesome that it's worked out that well.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely blessed with that, and I'm sure you're definitely not alone in that category.
Yeah, just a lot of time for games.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because going back when I was working my old job right before the first pandemic started, like you said, back around February of 2020 or whatever, one of my coworkers actually pulled you up. He's like, dude, check out this JFresh guy. I think you had like 100 followers at the time or something. And he's like, he's going to blow up. His advanced stats are really cool. They're easy to read. And immediately I was hooked. So, I mean, amazing job on that. Have you always done the graphics on there, because they just look so nice and clean? And as someone who doesn't understand analytics too much, besides that it's advanced math and stuff like that, is that something that you had like that just came easy to you, is putting those cards together?
Yeah, I've always been kind of a graphic design is my passion guy. Like I don't know if you guys have ever been on, there's like websites like aesthetics and sports logos where people post like uniform and jersey concepts and stuff like that. I used to do that a lot when I was younger. I actually kind of considered going into graphic design. And then, basically, as I moved away from that, in anything that I was doing, if I could find the opportunity to shoehorn some graphic design into whatever it was, I would do it, professionally or in school. And then inevitably for this stuff, I mean, you're talking about, I had 100 followers like back when you were checking it out. At that point, I really was just kind of putting together graphics just for my own sake or for my friend's sake. Like I did not have any like grand entrepreneurial intent that I was going to be, putting this stuff out there and then developing a Patreon and a personal brand and becoming a paid hockey writer and all this stuff. It really was like, I just wanted to have all these stats together in a place where I didn't have to hop from website to website whenever a Penguins trade rumor came up. And clearly, I think people, including I guess yourself, felt the same way about that. And I was pretty taken aback by it, but it's been a total blessing for the past year.
What's up with Jack Johnson?
Well, he's not very good at hockey. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I mean, in a similar way to how the JFresh name came about, like I just said, I was not expecting to get any traction with anything. I was, maybe hoping to pick up like a dozen followers when I posted that first graphic on there. And Don L from The Athletic retweeted it. And I got like an avalanche of followers like in the first couple of days there. And then, like I said, trade deadline kind of blew everything up. So I got pretty much stuck with the like half-assed ideas that I had just chucked on there because I needed a name and avatar. And Jack Johnson was ready-made. I needed an avatar, and I thought it would be kind of funny to put, notoriously the worst analytical player in the NHL as the avatar, and then it ended up, I guess, sticking. So now I don't use his picture anymore like I used to, but I do honor him with a Jack Johnson Penguins jersey in my profile pic.
You're succeeding in spite of him.
Exactly.
Just kind of one more thing, just on that topic of kind of going from 100 followers to now I think it's 12K, right, or something like that. What is that like when you just wake up and you're like, holy shit, people actually give a shit what I'm writing about and doing? Like, does it become like nerve-wracking to you that it's like a job now, or is it something that you still enjoy doing now?
It's definitely very weird. I mean, the thing is, like there are times where it's still felt very job-like, especially as I've moved from writing like on my own Substack to like having like deadlines and being like accountable to an editor and stuff like that. That's always going to have some effect. And I work full time, so this is kind of like I had one side hustle with the Patreon, and now it's two side hustles with the Patreon and the writing gig. So if it wasn't COVID right now and I had anything better to do, things might be a little bit more overloading. But honestly, like I do kind of have to keep reminding myself that, like, if I wasn't doing this, for an audience of thousands of people, I would probably still be doing a lot of it for myself, whether it was writing or posting on like message boards or in Discords or stuff like that. So honestly, to have people care about it and even want to pay me for it is a total blessing and something I don't take for granted. And I mean, when I appear on podcasts, like I was on the Athletics Penguins podcast Dying Alive a couple days ago, I recorded the PDO cast and then my microphone totally gave out, so it actually the episode was lost to history. But like appearing on shows that I had been listening to for like 4 or 5 years was definitely a very surreal thing. So it's been weird, but I don't take any of it for granted.
That's awesome. As I mentioned, I kind of got into hockey later in life. I was always more of a casual fan, but now really taking an interest to it and following it as much as I do. I was always brought up, with some of the more casual stats like plus minus, save percentage. It's like any other sport. Like in baseball, batting average is a good one that people really stick to, despite maybe there being better metrics to measure an individual player's performance. So I just wanted to get kind of right off the bat, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are similar with my level of familiarity with stats. Is plus minus and save percentage, are those metrics even helpful anymore, or have the stats just gone so far advanced beyond that we don't really even need to look at those when we're watching a game?
So it really depends on kind of how deep you want to get into things. Like I've always been very sympathetic to the look. I just want to watch hockey. I don't care about the math homework. Like that is totally understandable to me. And a lot of what I'm trying to do is to make the homework that you need to do to kind of get to that extra level of understanding a lot less arduous and tedious, because I'm sure that I probably got similar math grades in high school to a lot of the people who are hostile to it. But I mean, there are just kind of these logical holes that you can poke in some of those traditional stats, and you really don't have to dive that deep to improve them. I mean, like let's take plus minus, for example. Like the problem with plus minus isn't that you can't learn anything from the goal differential that a player's been on the ice for. You can glean something from that. The problem with plus minus is that it's just fundamentally broken in the way it's put together, where guys who play on the power play or with the net empty are getting penalized for doing that, because shorthanded goals are a tick against you for whoever's on the power play, and empty net goals are a tick against anybody who's trying to score a goal with 6 skaters on the ice, which is just stupid and totally ruins the point of the stat, which is to show your goal differential at even strength. Now you can get around that by just looking at even strength goals for percentage. It's not quite the same as plus minus, and you might have to wrap your head around a little bit, but it does the same thing that plus minus is supposed to do. It just does it right without any of those weird stupid caveats. Save percentage I think is another one where in principle, I mean, it's a hell of a lot better than wins or goals above or goals against average. Sorry, but you can kind of take that extra little dive past that and look at a stat like save percentage above expected, and you're just going to get that extra bit of value out of it, where you're not maybe overrating guys who play behind really good defenses, or underrating guys who play on teams like the Ducks or the Kings or the Red Wings or what have you. Uh, you know, and these stats are available, and I guess the onus is on people like me or people who are trying to communicate this stuff to the broader hockey fandom, to really kind of point to where you can find that kind of stuff and hopefully get people in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we see it a lot, especially, I mean, you're from Canada, we're from Minnesota, which is, pretty close to that. Like for hockey is like what we eat and breathe and, we sleep it, all that. It seems like there's a lot of younger kids now trying to act like they understand and know analytics when they really don't, and they go ahead and throw it on, Twitter or whatever. Does that ever irk you as like someone that is clearly very knowledgeable in the subject, or do you just let it go over your head and say, let them do what they want?
So I think that there's kind of a dual thing where, I mean, like if a teenager is putting out a chart or something like that to try to make a point, like, your heart is in the right place. That applies to whether you're using analytics or, using your eye test or whatever. People are entitled to have their own opinions. I do try to point people in the right direction in terms of using analytics properly, like making sure they're using the right sample sizes, understanding what the metrics that they're using actually apply and what the limitations are. And that can often be a lot less fun for people to keep in mind than the satisfaction you get from owning somebody with a specific chart or a specific stat that you might be misapplying. It doesn't necessarily irk me that they're doing it, because I don't think you can expect a 15-year-old who's doing school from home right now and is in whatever mind state they're in right now to have like an encyclopedic knowledge of every stat out there. What irks me is I guess when people in the analytics community who do know better aren't kind of putting the information out there to make sure that people understand what exactly it is they're citing and how best to do it.
A man of the people. Love to hear it.
You had a good point on Twitter today, going with more of an NHL centric question here. The decision to fire Claude Julien by the Canadiens, and you look at their numbers, and I thought this was fascinating that statistically they are the best even strength team, 5-on-5 team in the NHL, and yet some of their other stats are so bad that they decided they needed to make a change. And I think you're kind of in the same mindset that I am, that the decision just seemed a little bit odd by the Canadiens.
So I think you can definitely point to issues with the way that the Montreal Canadiens play at 5-on-5, even if the results have been good. They are a team that really likes to kind of generate those shots like from the point and then just have their guys scramble for rebounds and really try to kind of muddle shots through. And those are the kind of plays that can look really good to analytics and especially the kind of public analytics where shot location is like the most important factor just because of the limitations of the data that are available to the public. But it usually doesn't actually translate to goals that well. I think, like you pointed to, I mean, their goal differential at 5-on-5 has been the best in the NHL. Like they are not only kind of getting the scoring chances, they're actually outscoring their opponents by a lot, which in usual cases, if your team is the best team in the league at 5-on-5, generally as a coach, your job is pretty safe. The issue, and I think what must have happened for the Habs, is that they identified maybe that the same old story was starting to happen again. And actually, I'm in the process with a colleague of mine, David St. Louis of EP Rinkside. We're going to do kind of a breakdown of the Habs in the wake of this firing. And I think a stat that is well worth keeping in mind is that if you look at the differential between their goals and their expected goals, almost all of that area where kind of things are coming even is against the Canucks. Like they scored 20 goals in 5 games against the Canucks at 5-on-5. Like you're just not supposed to do that. but it's just because the Canucks are so bad at defending the rush that even the Habs, who are a bad team off the rush, were able to score a bunch of goals on them there. So I honestly, I think given more information, I see a lot more where the Habs are coming from, but it is very weird to see a team that's kind of in this situation where they are in terms of 5-on-5 play, decide to just clean house on the bench.
Yeah, for sure. Just kind of seeing your new work for EP Rinkside, as well as you mentioned there, as you have a new article coming out with your colleague. I've had a chance to, because I'm a subscriber to that, have been for a while. Awesome website. First of all, what is that kind of like joining an empire like that? And then I've really, really enjoyed, and I think a lot of people in Minnesota else have too, because you've included a couple Wild players, but those national teams that you've been projecting for 2022 have been awesome. And I just want to, ask a question just generally for you. You can answer this one now and kind of float around the other ones later. But we've known how underappreciated Jonas Brodin is. Do the advanced statistics back that up, that he's insanely underrated?
Yeah, I would say they definitely do. I'll hit on Brodin first, and then I'll circle back to the Ringside people. Yeah, I mean, Brodin is literally the best defensive defenseman in the NHL if you go by the analytics. Like, he is and has been for years and years. And I think that Jared Spurgeon is another guy on the Wild who, I mean, he has been, according to the analytics, like a top 5 defenseman in the league for years and years, and he's really only kind of finally starting to get recognition for it. But I mean, the Minnesota Wild defense is definitely well appreciated by those who come to the game from an analytical perspective. And if they could only get, maybe some better goaltending behind them, I think they would probably get the level of appreciation they deserve. But Brodin, well deserving of a spot on Team Sweden, considering the offensive talent they have on display, and I hope he gets there. As for the EP Rinkside thing, it's a similar thing. I mean, I'm lining up in, a press release being announced with, Dmitry Filipovich and Ryan Lambert, people whose work I've been reading and listening to for years. It's a little surreal, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to kind of collaborate with them on these different projects. And, there's a lot of people working for that website whose work I was a little unfamiliar with, just because I hadn't been a subscriber previously. Like Mitch Brown, for example, has done a whole lot of these really great kind of X's and O's tape breakdowns that I really appreciate, kind of coming to the game from a perspective that I'm still trying to get a hold on. And the opportunity to work with and kind of consult these guys and ask for their thoughts has been super, super helpful. So I couldn't be happier to be there right now.
Awesome. Jake, do you have any other questions as we kind of wrap up? I mean, I'm sure you've got a million.
Yeah, I got a million. This has been really fun. Thanks for doing this, first of all. But I do have one more question. I noticed, you kind of, I feel like you like the mysterious type of aspect to this. Is that something that you purposely do, or is it something that you're just like, I love doing this, but I don't want my face being out there or anything like that, so I'll just slap, Jack Johnson on or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my field, like my professional field, is totally not connected to anything that I'm doing right now. I can, trumpet that I do like data analysis, and not kind of mention that it's all in a hockey sense. But I mean, my original field, like I have a bachelor's and master's degree in international affairs, and that's where I'm working right now. So I think the prospect of having potential employers look up my full name and then the only things that come up are like breakdowns of Connor McDavid's defense, I figured was a little undesirable. Plus, I mean, I think that you see it a lot in, the hockey journalism community or the analytics community as well. It's just a lot easier to kind of go by the pseudonym and not have, if somebody's going to smear you or call you an idiot or something like that, it doesn't hurt to have them use a ridiculous pseudonym rather than, actually saying your real name. So for the time being, that's just the way it is. I'm not completely anonymous. Like, my name is on press releases and even some articles and podcasts and stuff. But, I think I'm happy with the balance that I have right now, where I do get kind of anonymity for the most part. And, the stuff is out there for anybody who really, really cared to find out.
Well, we certainly appreciate you hopping on to give us a really interesting look at some of the analytics that are being used in the hockey world today. Before we let you go, though, of course, we want to give you an opportunity to just plug your work so that listeners of our show can find your stuff if they are not yet looking at it. And so just let the people know where they can find everything.
Yeah, so like I mentioned a couple times, you can find my work on EP Ringside. It's Elite Prospects kind of journalism wing. They just added a whole lot of new talent, on top of me. So definitely somewhere that you're going to want to check out. You can read my far too frequent tweets at JFresh Hockey on Twitter. Post a lot of visualizations and reactions to hockey news on there. I also have a Substack, which I am still kind of occasionally posting on, just because I'm with EP in kind of a freelance capacity. So that's jfresh.substack.com. And finally, my data visualizations, and I have piles and piles of them at this point because I keep adding them like once every week or so, are on Patreon. If you're a $5 subscriber or more per month, you get full access to everything. So make sure to check that out at, I believe it's patreon.com/jfreshhockey.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining the show, and take care and be well.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.